Gemini said, "My name is Elena. This is the story of how my father's cruelest moment became the spark that built my empire." The heavy oak door didn't just close. It slammed with a finality that shook the very air. I stood on the rain-slicked driveway, the cold wind biting through my thin blouse. Behind the glass, my sister Clara watched with a smug grin, already imagining how she'd turn my bedroom into her new content studio. My father's voice still echoed in my ears, a jagged blade of a memory. "Go exist in the gutter. Elena, you're a leech with no future. Clara is the star of this family." He didn't know that for 3 years while I sat quietly in that room, I wasn't wasting time. I was building a high-frequency trading algorithm that had just crossed the $USD 00 million mark. To them, I was the unemployed hermit. In reality, I was their secret benefactor, quietly paying the property taxes they had neglected. I dropped the keys to the family car onto the wet gravel, the metallic clink sounding like a victory bell. I didn't need their charity, and I certainly didn't need their house. I pulled out my encrypted phone and sent a single text to my lead broker. "The transition is complete. Move the liquid assets to the primary offshore account and activate the penthouse. It's time to stop playing the victim and start playing the hunter." As I walked toward the gate, the rain felt like a baptism. They wanted me in the gutter, but they forgot one thing. I owned the street. Finding a taxi at midnight in the suburbs was nearly impossible. But a private black car arrived within minutes. A perk of a black-tier concierge service my father didn't even know existed. As the city lights blurred past the window, I watched my net worth tick upward on my tablet. The software was executing trades with surgical precision. By the time I reached the Obsidian, the most exclusive residential tower in the city, my assistant, Marcus, was waiting in the lobby. "Welcome home, Miss V," he said, bowing slightly. The penthouse was a glass-walled fortress overlooking the skyline purchased through a shell company a year ago for this exact moment. I stood on the balcony looking down at the world that had tried to crush me. I spent the night analyzing my father's portfolio. He was over-leveraged, his empire held together by vanity and mounting debt. He thought he was the king, but I held the mortgage to his throne. I made a phone call to my legal team. "I want every debt note under Arthur Sterling's name bought out by dawn," I commanded. "Every loan, every mortgage, every credit line. Use the Viper Fund. I want him to wake up realizing he doesn't own the chair he's sitting in." I wasn't just leaving. I was preparing to repossess his entire life. By sunrise, the trap was set. My father had kicked me out of his house, so it was only fair that I eventually kicked him out of mine. By Monday morning, the financial world was in a frenzy. A mysterious entity known as Horizon Alpha had executed a hostile takeover of Sterling Enterprises' largest development project. I sat in my glass office sipping coffee as I watched the news reports of my father's frantic press conferences. He looked haggard, his bravado replaced by a visible tremor. He was calling every investor he knew. But little did he know, I had already offered them buyouts they couldn't refuse. I had transformed myself, too. Gone were the hoodies and messy buns. I now wore tailored silk suits and a cold, calculating competence that felt like armor. I kept a close eye on Clara's social media. She was posting videos from my old room, mocking my disappearance to her followers, oblivious to the fact that the very Wi-Fi she was using was now part of a property in foreclosure. On Wednesday evening, my mother finally called. Her voice was trembling. "Elena, please. Your father is losing everything. Some shadow company is destroying us. If you have any savings at all, we need a loan to save the house." I stared at the city lights, feeling a strange mix of pity and resolve. "I told you I was working on something big." "Mom," I said calmly. "You just chose not to believe me." I hung up and sent a final instruction to Marcus. "Invite them to the annual Founders Gala. Send the invitation by a courier. It's time for the big reveal." The Grand Imperial Ballroom was a sea of diamonds and designer tuxedos. My family arrived looking desperate, their forced smiles failing to hide the panic in their eyes. My father was cornering board members, begging for a lifeline while Clara tried to snap selfies to maintain her wealthy Aries image. They were waiting for the arrival of the mystery mogul who had saved the local market from collapse. When the double door swung open, the room went silent. I walked down the grand staircase in a black gown embroidered with silver, looking every bit like the queen of the industry. The gasps were audible. My father froze, his champagne glass nearly slipping from his hand. "Elena," he stammered, his face turning a ghostly pale. How did you get an invite to this?" I walked straight up to him, my heels clicking rhythmically on the marble. "I didn't need an invitation to my own event, Dad," I said, my voice echoing through the silent hall. "I'm the CEO of Horizon Alpha. I'm the one who bought your debt and I'm the one who currently owns every square inch of the house you kicked me out of." Clara stepped forward, her face twisted in disbelief. You're just a basement-dwelling nerd." I looked at her with pure ice in my eyes. "That nerd just bought your entire future, Clara, and your 48 hours to vacate the premises starts now." The silence that followed was the sweetest sound I had ever heard. The confrontation moved to a private suite upstairs. My father tried to roar with his old authority, but it sounded hollow now. "You betrayed your own blood," he shouted, though his eyes were wet with fear. I didn't flinch. I laid out the documents on the table, the foreclosure notices, the stock transfers, and the eviction order. "You didn't see me as blood when you told me to live in the gutter," I said, my voice low and steady. "You saw me as a burden because I didn't fit your definition of success. I paid your taxes for 2 years in secret just to keep a roof over your head, and you repaid me with an insult I will never forget." My mother sobbed into her hands while Clara stood in the corner, her phone finally silent. I wasn't a monster, though. I offered them a deal, a modest life in a suburban home I had purchased with a strictly managed trust that would cover their basic needs, but nothing more. No more designer bags, no more country clubs, no more ego. "Sign the remaining shares over to me, and you won't spend tonight in a shelter," I told them. My father looked at the pen as if it were a weapon. He realized he had no moves left. He had spent his life underestimating the quiet one. And now the quiet one was his only hope. With a shaking hand, he signed the papers. The Sterling Empire was officially dead. The Elena era had begun. 3 weeks later, I stood in the empty foyer of my childhood home. The movers had taken everything. The echoes of my father's temper and my sister's vanity were finally gone, replaced by a peaceful, hollow silence. I walked into my old room, the one Clara had tried to steal. It was bare, just a small space where a girl with a dream and a laptop had changed the world. I didn't feel the burning need for revenge anymore. I felt a profound sense of closure. Clara was now living in a tiny apartment, trying to find a real job for the first time in her life. My parents were settling into their quiet, modest life, finally learning the value of $1. I looked out the window at the long driveway. A sleek black SUV was waiting for me. I had a meeting with the city's mayor to discuss a new tech hub I was funding. A place for kids like me, the quiet ones who were often overlooked. I walked out of the house and locked the door for the last time. As I drove away, I didn't look in the rearview mirror. My father had told me to go live in the streets, so I went out and bought the whole neighborhood. I wasn't just a survivor of a toxic family. I was the architect of a new legacy. The gutter was behind me and the entire horizon was ahead. I was finally truly free.